Welcome to the Darkstream, Voxday, voxday.blogspot.com, and unauthorized.tv. First of all, apologies for the brief outage tonight on unauthorized.tv. We were only down for about 15 minutes. Turned out to just be a technical issue. All is good. Everything is back up and running. And so we're back in business. Tonight, I'm going to talk about the Epstein fallout, which is to say what we think might be the Epstein fallout. Of course, there's not a lot that we can know for certain. So we'll get to that in a minute. But I have to say, I'm in a really good mood tonight. I was actually working on some new music for what will probably be for the Rebels Run movie, and it's pretty cool. I wish I could play some of it here, but I have learned that that's always a mistake because it inevitably leads to the drums are too loud problem. But you know, it's something that I've missed doing for a long time, and it's fun to get back doing it again. So anyhow, I am not growing a mustache, I assure you. So let's talk about Jeffrey Epstein. And the most interesting stuff that we've learned so far, I think, is related to his funding and what he is, not just how he got his money, but what he was doing. And keeping in mind that I know nothing about any of this stuff, other than, you know, what I've read online like everybody else, I can't help but think about something that came up on a Q post some time ago. And it was when they said that they were dealing with North Korea, and they were dealing with Syria, and they were dealing with something else, and they were saving Israel for last. Now, what does that mean? And I think that the obvious answer is that Israel has been deeply interfering with U.S. politics, and you know, not just through the regular lobbying approach, but also through the let's say the less legitimate means. And so, you know, there's nothing wrong with a nation state pushing its own interest, but you do have this interesting problem where the interests of the nation are actually being sabotaged or misdirected and so forth. And, you know, now they know that Robert Maxwell was working for the Mossad and possibly was even bumped off by them. Although apparently they also theorized that the Russians might have done it. But it's clear that Epstein is, you know, into something on that level. Doesn't mean it's the Israelis. It could just as easily be the British. You know, certainly the UK and MI6 and the British ambassador and everything are not working in a friendly manner with the Trump administration. So whoever Epstein was working with and working for, Duralex Sedlex is correct. We do have to at least consider the possibility that he was being run by an intelligence agency. Where did he get the money? The guy was a math teacher. Happy Kitty says he is a member of the elite control class, Fox. Yeah, we know that. But there isn't one elite. The elite is a whole series of factions, like every other elite in history. If you talk about the Roman elite, what was Roman history in the last 60, 75 years of the Republic? Well, you had the new men, represented by Gaius Marius, going up against the Optimates, led by Sulla. And depending on which elite was in control, they were purging and massacring the other side. And then you had the first triumvirate, which descended into war between the members of the triumvirate. And then you had the second triumvirate, which did the same thing. If you remember, Pompey the Great fighting against Julius Caesar, and so forth. And so, to just say someone is a member of the global elite doesn't tell you that much, because, again, you need to understand which faction they're working with. And so, and I'm sure there's people who keep track of all this sort of thing. I'm not, I don't. But these sort of things are obvious because, there's different interests, fundamentally different interests. Everybody wants to be, I shouldn't say everybody. A lot of the various factions want to be on top. Thomas W. asks the question, what faction is Epstein part of? That's what I'm talking about. I don't know. There's some indication, potentially, that it might have something to do with Israel, except for the fact that, that's the natural assumption, because he's Jewish, and some of the people that he's affiliated with are Israeli. But on the other hand, he doesn't seem to have been, we just can't tell, because we have no idea who he was influencing and in what direction. 121 Jones, I think, is probably right when he says maybe Epstein was really just the front man for a blackmail ring. Exactly. He wasn't a genuine billionaire. A lot of these people who are supposed to be super rich and stuff aren't really that rich. If you look at Gloria Vanderbilt, she doesn't seem to have left much of a financial legacy behind. And so if you're looking at his resources, like, for example, the $77 million property he had in New York was just given to him. And I suspect that's probably true of a lot of his other possessions, like, the island that he has next to Richard Branson and that sort of thing. Shaun of the Roses asks, but who is he taking marching orders from? We don't know. We genuinely don't know. We know that he hung out with Prince Andrew a lot, but you would think that he wouldn't be hanging out with Prince Andrew like that if he was reporting to the royal family and so forth. But that's what I was saying. The Epstein fallout. These are the kind of things that we are potentially going to learn. Clearly, the logical assumption is that he was involved in blackmailing a large number of celebrities and politicians and CEOs. Edward Strinden makes a good point. Like Marc Dutroux in Belgium, he was the pedophile killer in Belgium, who was protected by a lot of powerful people. He owned 6 houses but was on welfare. Yeah, I'm not interested in people policing what I say. If you're going to play these, are you naming this, that, or the other thing? You're going to be banned so fast. My positions on things are very, very clear. There are over 20,000 blog posts and apparently 425 videos that you can watch. I'm not hiding anything. But I'm not into this whole, you must address these various issues. I address what I want to address in my own time. And what we're talking about now is what the potential fallout of the Epstein arrest is going to be. Can Trump truly shut it all down? I think that would be difficult to shut it all down. There's a lot of stuff going on in Asia that he has no ability to address. But he can certainly shut it down in the States, and certainly he has significantly aided different governments around the world that are attempting to shut it down. There have been mass arrests in Norway, in the Philippines. There's all kinds of arrests of these horrific rings taking place. And I suspect that they're going to learn a lot more now that Epstein's been arrested, and they can go in and search his properties, search his island, etc., etc. Grime Knight says, do you name the X is so myopic and secret knowledge-esque? It's even worse than that. It's basically people trying to dictate your behavior and trying to force your hand. And that's wrong. Do you deny? Do you deny, Bill, deny the science guy? It's the same sort of thing. Is Epstein another controlled burn like Weinstein was? I don't believe so. Weinstein was outed by the media. And it was clear that, with the whole Me Too thing, remember, we learned that Me Too was created by CAA out of Hollywood. So obviously that was a controlled burn. But it's also very clear that Epstein did not have any idea that he was going to be arrested. He didn't suspect anything was up, or he wouldn't have been flying in from Paris. And he certainly wouldn't have incriminating materials sitting there waiting to be discovered in his safe at home. And so I personally suspect, I don't believe because I don't have any information on it, but I suspect that Donald Trump was invited at the lowest ring, the lowest rung of this circle of these circles of hell. He was invited to participate because he was wealthy, he was influential, and he was a hedonist. And that's how you get corrupted by anything. From the these elite pedos to the lowest level drug dealer on the street. They give you a taste, they give you the bait, and they see if they can hook you. And it's clear that Trump couldn't be hooked. he didn't want to have anything to do with it. And I suspect that that's when he first decided that he was going to become president and put an end to all this evil, reprehensible behavior. I strongly suspect that this is exactly what he ran for president to do. And you have to be aware that anyone who's capable of concealing their intentions for that period of time, anyone who's that strategic is going to have a very different perspective than those of us who are paying attention to the 3-day news cycle. And so I think that also might account for all the various head fakes that he's been giving. Oh, we're going to attack Iran, and I'm going to say lots of things about Iran. And then nothing happens. Remember, the man is dealing with the highest level of difficulty of anybody in the presidency, probably since Reagan, and definitely since JFK. Unlike Reagan and JFK, he appears to have known from the get-go that he would be under threat. And obviously he has taken all the necessary precautions. And it looks like we're going to find out in the next 2 weeks if General Flynn, was actually bait. It appears that there's stuff going on that's much bigger. And I'm not talking just based on all the Q stuff. I mean, the Q stuff may well turn out to be mostly legitimate. Certainly it has been a much, much more accurate path than those provided by the mainstream media. If you follow Q, you expected Jeffrey Epstein to get arrested at some point. That's not true of the mainstream media perspective. And this is good news. I totally agree with Owen when he was getting frustrated by who was originally responsible for this. So, and he may, for all we know, he may be fully active today. We have no idea. Somebody said something about Acosta. Let's see. Acosta is, both Acosta and Mueller are clearly compromised on some level, given their past actions. Mueller has repeatedly been involved in letting convicted pedophiles off, and then he's done it with David Asimov. He did it with Epstein. Acosta, I suspect that it might be one of those situations where you keep your enemies close. Or he could just be somebody who is weak. Essagram says, "Hi Vox, how does someone start to follow Q?" Do a search for Neon Revolt. Neon Revolt has a excellent summary of the most recent, I think, 30 post Q drop. And he has a description of what's going on, and he has Neon Revolt is definitely going down the rabbit hole, but he does really good work, and I highly recommend both his blog as well as his Revolution Q book that is coming out pretty soon. And so if you look at what he's talking about, he puts a lot of this stuff in perspective And then he also has a link to, what is it? I think I know what it is here. Let's see. You could go to about Q. No, because once you start talking about Q, then it immediately becomes this massive discussion about, I mean, like right now, you know, so is this Q stuff actually real? I mean, I keep telling people it doesn't matter. It's information that points you in the right direction. And so whether it is completely true or not, it is more true than CNN. It is more true than Fox News. It is more true than, than any of the MSNBCs and the ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN. That's what you'll have a more accurate perspective on what's actually going on in the world if you follow it, whether it's real or not. Let's do a few super chats here. Let's see. AJ Rhino says, found God again thanks to you and Owen. Gratitude on steroids. Well, to the extent that we're actually involved, you're welcome. After 2 decades of sin, drugs, alcohol, Wall Street, I'm repenting. Atheist scientists aren't the smart ones, though the deceit is real. Yeah, the thing is, sin is tempting. And success plants the seeds of failure, both in material terms and in moral terms. It's always a struggle. But, once you see through the veil of the material, once you realize that, yes, there is actually more out there than chasing the next buzz, that's when you can that's when your eyes start to open. Sean Bozeman said, there's also some deep occult stuff Epstein's into. He has a custom-built Egyptian-style temple on his island. I wonder what goes on there. I think we all assume some tremendously horrific things. It looks like they've already been trying to fumigate it and clean it out and destroy all the evidence there. I imagine that there's probably already FBI agents there digging through it. Duralex Sedlex said, it would not surprise me if it's the Brits. Their aristocracy has never stopped screwing with us, even after we kicked their asses twice. No, it wouldn't be a big surprise, and that's why I think that you can't just go, it's the Israelis. It could be. They certainly can't be ruled out, but you can't just assume that either simply because the guy happens to be Jewish. There's plenty of powerful Jews over in England, and there's definitely with Robert Maxwell's daughter, who's appears to have been Epstein's consigliere. There's reason to look that way as well. And it's even possible that there's a connection between Epstein's arrest and this bizarre showdown with the British ambassador and the leak and all that sort of stuff. So, we're just little tiny minnows in a big, huge ocean. And, when stuff is going on with the whales, we just see all the big waves splashing here and splashing there. All we can do is just do our best to try to understand what's happening, but we can't pretend that we know. Submitted to Christ says, enjoying David the Good's Tiny House Expat series. Is there a way to send out an email to members when any new video is uploaded to unauthorized? Not yet, but we have put in a request to the technicians for precisely that. I would very much like that. I'd also like to see a feature where the newest, you have the videos arranged in such a way so that whatever is the newest video is always on top. That would be good too. Delawarean D said, how did Epstein make all his money? It appears to have just been given to him when he was just a math teacher. So there's clearly something extremely shady going on. Sammy Shaw says, I don't think there will be any billionaires with no skeletons in their closets. I think there are a few. There's always, even in the belly of the beast, which is Hollywood, there's a few good people that are there on the basis of talent alone. They need some people with talent, genuine talent, because what else can they copy? What else can they rip off? What else can they base it on? So they, I don't remember who it was, but it was, somebody on one of the boards who apparently has, been in Hollywood for a long time. And somebody asked them, is everyone there evil? And he said, no, there's plenty of normal people that are just, like lighting technicians and stuff. He said, as far as the people that, like the actors and the directors and producers, he said, about, I think he said about 35% of them are actively involved in evil. And then he said there's another whatever it was, 10% that are just, good, talented people who actually made it on the basis of talent. He said, and then the rest are people that live in fear and are, making as few compromises as they can, but they're making compromises in order to, move up the ladder, as it were. And so, that's why it's important to know who you are, and it's important to decide what sort of price you're willing to pay. How much of your soul are you willing to sell? I decided a long time ago that I wasn't willing to do anything. I didn't want success. I wasn't willing. I wasn't willing to pay any price whatsoever for success. And what I mean by that is, when we had our band Psychosonic, and our record label desperately wanted us to go on tour, and we were just like, no, we just want to make music and put it out, and if it's good enough, people will pay attention to it, and if not, then well, so be it. None of us even quit our jobs. We just kept living our normal lives, but we happened to also play in this, modestly successful band. And, part of me wonders what we could have done if we'd really thrown ourselves into it. But on the other hand, if you look at how things have turned out for so many very successful musicians and rock stars, I'm pretty glad that we didn't choose that route. Let's see. Vox a few minutes behind, but can you do a small explanation on how Flynn may have been used as bait? Yeah, Trump seems to have figured out early on, or else, it's theorized that military intelligence figured out pretty early on that there was some very, very funky business related to Hillary Clinton and the Russians, as well as the UK. And so, Flynn is a high-level intelligence officer, so he's a very smart guy. He knows how these things work. etc., etc. And so he basically arranged. It's believed that, drawing fire. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, because if he was bait and if he was just drawing fire, then he will have picked up a lot of information, and we'll see him, get pardoned and probably be very involved in the investigation of everything surrounding the Clinton Foundation, Epstein's contacts, etc., etc. Again, if you go to Neon Revolt, he explains it much better and in much more detail than I just did. Let's see here. Andrew Fitz says, I had a 7th grade math teacher who was caught with hours of video of our volleyball team. Watch out for math teachers. Yeah, exactly. Vox, do you agree with KLF's anti-music industry engagement? Yeah, in fact, we were actually label mates with KLF on Wax Tracks. We didn't, I mean, I haven't been paid for any of my publishing royalties in over 20 years. And so it's going to be interesting if we, do a remake or whatever of our songs, and they try to come after me for not having paid royalties on it, because I'm just going to turn around and say, oh, so you control the royalties and you're the one who hasn't been responding to my emails. Let's see those records for the last 20 years. I mean, the music industry is in some ways even shadier than Hollywood, although on a much less, on a much smaller scale. I'm pretty sure nobody who's just in the music industry is, getting into esoteric sacrifices and stuff. I mean, maybe the Jay-Z's and Beyonce's and Taylor Swift's of the world, but they're not really what I would call music industry per se. They're well into Hollywood at that point. Q is posting right now. Okay, let's go see what he has to say. Since it is probably very relevant to the subject at hand. Okay. Bill Maher, no joke or reference regarding Epstein, no attempt to connect back to POTUS, President of the United States, silence, hunted. Yeah, Bill Maher is supposed to be a red shoe pedophile, and so which puts him at the one of the lower circles of hell. Here's another one. When did the FBI, Department of Justice, interview RC? I don't know who RC is. Somebody who started a modeling talent agency. Oh, they're talking about internal security cam pics of Epstein's temple. Oh, Rachel Chandler, that's it. What age? Yeah, they're talking about the pictures of Bill Clinton and Rachel Chandler on Epstein's plane. And she's apparently somebody who was quite involved with Epstein, although not at the level of Ghislaine Maxwell. let's see here. Oh, a post about Biden's tax returns. Somehow he made $15 million. And Q claims that the gold standard is coming back and says it will destroy the Fed. Ed Buck sued. He's the big gay Democratic donor who apparently managed to who caused a couple young black men to OD. And here's something about Flynn. There's a big direct reason why Flynn's new attorney is seeking security clearance. Listen very carefully. Again, note the past two years, note the past 6 years. You were told what was going to happen. You were told what battles we face. Strategic, pre-planned. Yeah, so anyhow, let's see. You didn't think the Epstein investigation began a few months ago, did you? It was all under the direction and oversight of AG Jeff Sessions. Expect a lot more to become public unsealing. And apparently Tom Steyer, the billionaire, is in the sights. So anyhow, nothing too tremendously new other than the shot or two at Bill Maher and so forth. But the big thing is the promise that more is coming. This will indicate how legitimate Q is. He's said more is coming. Either more is coming. And he's also said that Epstein was one of the keys and that Epstein was going to be arrested. Well, guess what? It just happened. And so, for those who are totally dubious about this, you have to at least credit the fact that it's consistent with events in a way that the mainstream media story is not. Andy makes a good observation. Rachel and Chandler, do you see a connection to Friends? See, if I was Miles Mathis, I would scoff at that, immediately conclude that she was Jewish, and then explain her genealogy going back 300 years to English nobility or something. Just so you know, I really like Miles Mathis, but it does. I usually, when it gets to the genealogy parts, I usually skip it. But he does often have a really good sense for like made up names. And Rachel Chandler is, about the only way that you could make that more dubious is if her name was Rachel Ross, right? But anyhow, yeah. Speaking of Miles, arrested 6'6" at 66 years old. Yeah. So anyhow. Vox, any take on the stock market? Oh, I would assume when it starts going down, it's going to go down for a while. But when that's going to start, I have no idea. Blop Jones says, it's not hard to predict a known pedo is going to get arrested. I think Q is a joke. What are you talking about? Epstein got arrested and walked. Nobody, including Epstein himself, thought he was going to get arrested. I don't think that that's a reasonable perspective. Find Q posts at qanon.pub. There you go. Jeff Mullen says, evil has not ontological existence, it's the absence of good. Well, I disagree. Evil does exist, because there are beings that reject good that reject God's will, and therefore it does exist. It's not just a negation. Sammy Shaw says, Epstein arrested, Clinton cancels all her speaking arrangements. Coincidence? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. How far do you think these elite pedophile rings extend? Probably around the globe, but I think that they're possibly second. Legionnaire Bear says Mossad and 9/11. Q said saving Israel for last. Yeah, I mentioned that earlier in the stream. The more that's coming out about Epstein's shady financing and who he might have been working for, but it's hard to balance that against, the apparent, Israeli first perspective of the Trump administration's foreign policy. So, but again, President Trump has proven to be an expert's expert when it comes to head fakes. And so at this point, I'm basically taking my 2-day rule and I'm just saying, make it indefinite. We just have to wait and see. We can have confidence. Certainly things appear to be moving in the direction that we've all hoped. But, pray that he does the right thing. Pray that he's protected. And pray that God will wreak his vengeance on the evil. Hi, Vox. Are Sigmas usually athletically gifted and attractive? They're usually attractive. They're not necessarily athletically gifted. But they do tend to be unusually good at something. And it's something that they tend to be a little bit obsessive about. It can be playing the guitar. It can be, bull riding. It can be anything. If Israel goes down, they will go and cry wolf and play the victims again. Well, I would assume so. Forget the mustache. I wanted to see the mohawk make a comeback. Hey, the mohawk would make a comeback if I could grow it, but I'm afraid those days are over. Okay, I've got a few super chats to get to. Hang on. Let's see. When and how did you first learn that your observation skills were above the norm? I'm trying to think about. I would say that I probably realized it when I was in college. And I think that I specifically, at first it was all related to girls. It became very clear to me that I had a ability to predict female behavior that was better than all my friends, all the other guys. And I can't say that I really developed it very highly beyond that, because frankly that was my main area of interest at the time. But it became very, very obvious that people didn't realize how much I was observing until I started writing. It was specifically when I wrote my third book, which was The World in Shadow. And my mother had read part of it, and she recognized some stuff that was clearly inspired by people at high school. And she said, "Oh no, I had no idea that you were paying that level of attention." So apparently people didn't even notice that I was observing things and observing them. So that was when I really began to realize that maybe I had a more highly, a more highly developed abilities in that area in general. That it wasn't just being obsessed with girls or whatever. Did evil exist before Satan? According to Christian theology, no. It's kind of interesting. I've been reading. Neil Stephenson's Fall, or Dodge in Hell, and it's very conceptually interesting. It's not necessarily that interesting to read in parts. In fact, I have to almost make myself go back to it. I've read nearly half of a nonfiction book, the one on the Thucydides trap, called Destined for War. I keep reading a few pages of the Stevenson and flipping over to the nonfiction, which is usually not a good sign for the novel, but it is a very interesting novel. The ideas are very intriguing. And it's kind of like, it's a secular perspective and retelling, and of course, it's basically Paradise Lost in cyberspace, with uploaded minds. So it's intriguing, and it's very well done. It's a very ambitious novel. I can't say that it's an enjoyable novel yet. Parts of it are, but anyhow, but Stevenson would answer the question, no, as well. Legionnaire Bearer's question came in midstream. This is random. The reason I trust you and Owen is because you had the ability to make the big money and you kept your souls instead. People need to understand what that means. I wish I could take credit for that, but honestly, I had two or really three advantages that most people don't, which is why I can't take too much credit for it. Number one, I was raised by a loving Christian family. We had issues, obviously, some fairly serious issues, but I never doubted that I was loved. I never doubted that my parents cared about me. So I didn't have that emptiness to fill. There was never that just desperate need for things. And you often see it in kids where the parents don't give them enough of the right kind of attention. I see it sometimes in other kids that are my children's age. You can just practically see the hunger for love and belonging and acceptance in their eyes. And I was never missing that, so I didn't need to fill that. Also, my family was very wealthy at the time, and so unfortunately that's mostly gone now, but so I already had a wary relationship with money because I'd seen plenty of really rich people. I knew Ken Lay. I saw what happened to Enron. If that doesn't give you a skeptical attitude towards money, I don't know what will. And I knew a lot of very wealthy people, and they weren't any happier than the middle class or the poor people that I knew. They weren't, it's a myth to say, oh, all rich people are unhappy. That's just sour grapes talking. But in general, happiness is pretty orthogonal to wealth. And I understood that. Fortunately, I had the opportunity to understand that at a very young age. And then the third thing is that I'm just, frankly, too lazy for that. Once I get to a level that I'm more or less happy with, the idea of putting in all the additional effort for declining marginal utility tends not to appeal. But I do understand what you're saying, and you are correct that those who choose to keep their souls over money, success, material things, hedonism, whatever it is, fame, that is something that is intrinsically trustworthy. Both Owen and I have a strong tendency to prefer people who are seekers. They might not be Christians. They might not be particularly good people, but you can see the direction that they're heading. You can see that they want the truth, that they're searching for the truth, that they're looking for the truth. That's why I tend to, like and trust people like Roosh and like Mike Cernovich. Roosh is a Christian now, but he wasn't before. But it doesn't surprise me. It didn't surprise me at all when he became one. I think I even wrote years before that it wouldn't surprise me if he did. And, Stefan Molyneux is somebody that I see like that. So, but I'm glad that you do find us trustworthy. What do you think of Q releasing Hillary's snuff film? I don't believe it exists. I think that, I have no doubt that Hillary has done some very, very terrible things. But I simply don't believe that whole, the story about the, doing awful things to a little girl on camera and so forth. I don't think that Hillary Clinton is that stupid. I think she's that evil. I don't think she's that stupid. When you look at those, when you look at that stuff, people love to pile on and make stuff up. And I'm not even talking about the shills who are trying to exaggerate and amplify in order to make the whole thing look ridiculous. So I don't think that's the case. Somebody's talked about the Clintons look so unhealthy, their sins are finally catching up to them. I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if it turned out that Hillary Clinton had Kuru. And that would not surprise me at all. Spitfire throws in $1. Thank you. And Clark Smith says, "Hey Vox, great show. What denomination of church were you raised in?" I was raised in a Baptist church. Not Southern Baptist, but Baptist. Were you baptized? Yes. I love your Christian perspective interwoven in all your shows. Just want to show my support. It's kind of funny because when I was a kid, I always disliked people who insisted on inserting their religion into everything. But, so it seems just deeply ironic that I turn out to be someone who would do that now. But the thing is, it's really that fundamentally important. The same way that Italian Navy admiral once told me that all philosophical disputes come down to Aristotle versus Plato. everything, I mean, everything else, and even that, even Plato versus Aristotle, I think comes down to Jesus Christ or Satan. You know, if you take any serious dispute, whether it's moral, whether it's political, you know, whether it's aesthetic, whether it's science, you can almost always trace it through all the intricacies and realize, is it something that, you know, at the next level of abstraction, does it represent the good, the beautiful, and the true? Or does it represent the evil, the ugly, and the false? And of course, the layer below that, Jesus Christ, Satan. Now, those are the choices. That's what it all comes down to. Let's see. Merkel has the Kuru shakes too. What a coincidence. Yeah, I know. That thought crossed my mind. AJ Rhino says, they used to say on Wall Street that money doesn't buy happiness, but not having any ensures misery. It's complete BS and upside down more often than not. I wouldn't say it's necessarily upside down. Like I said, I think it's mostly orthogonal. There's, you know, it's kind of amazing that, I mean, yes, I'm older, I have more responsibility and that sort of thing, but, you know, I look back when I didn't make that much money and I had no responsibilities, and I was not only happy, I felt like I was rich, you know. Anything I wanted, I could afford. I just didn't want very much. You know, it's such a great place to be in. Legionnaire Bear says, halfway through your book, A Throne of Bones, love the Christianity you placed back into the genre. Hey, that's a Christian genre. Epic fantasy is and should be a Christian genre. Tolkien, Lewis, etc. And JP throws in $1. Is Big Bear here? I have no idea, but there's a good chance that he's either listening to it now or later. What is your view on Trinitarianism? I've stated my view very clearly. I subscribe to the Nicene Creed. I do not subscribe to the Niceno-Constantinian Creed. But I'm open to the possibility. I'm not militant about it. You know, I understand that that is not the common perspective, but, you know, I think a lot of people might be willing to be cautious when they realize that it's, you know, both Isaac Newton and I reached the same conclusions. So, how would you recommend someone interact with a Lambda boss, Lambda subordinates? Just, you know, treat them like deltas. You know, treat them like normal men, and they will usually appreciate that. And don't buy into all the gibes and the flirting and the attempts to outrage and so forth. So, all right. Well, thanks for tuning in tonight. Again, you know, we don't know what the truth is, but it sounds like we're going to find out soon. So pray for President Trump. Pray for all the agents involved, and pray that the good guys win. This is the Darkstream. I'm Vox Day.